Hi everyone, so earlier last night we got the PTR Season 4 patch notes for Diablo 4. This is going to be a big one. This is why they're actually doing a test round this time, because if you have not seen this from the previous campfire, there is a lot of stuff coming here. So just as a quick reminder, or if you have not seen that, there's an itemization change coming. All of the items are going to change. The stats that you can roll in the items, there's new crafting systems, there's the pit, a new endgame system similar to Greater Rifts. From Diablo 3, there's new bosses, Helltide reworks, a lot of stuff. And we get to try it all out on April 2nd, so next Tuesday. I'm going to be there, I'm going to be blasting the PTR as long as possible to try to test everything. But earlier we also got the remaining patch notes for that patch, including all of the balance updates, the new items, the aspect changes, and all that kind of stuff. So we went through that for a few hours. As you can see, this is a very large post, and I'm going to try to, give you the gist of it basically with a short summary, as short as it can be. So I'm gonna give you the winners and the losers and kind of like what are the main takeaways here. I prepared this list and I'm gonna go through it first of all, going class by class, and then some general updates that I've done that will shape the game in the future. So I'm very excited for this patch. I think generally it looks really good. There's really cool stuff in this patch with new items and new builds for all of the classes. Everything gets me excited. And obviously there are some nerfs, Hoda, etc. But I guess everyone saw that coming from miles away. And well, let's get into it. So let's start with Barbarian here. Barbarian is actually looking really interesting next time around. They are breaking a little bit of this like charge and Hoda meta that we had. Hoda is getting pretty heavy nerfs, to be fair. The Fury scaling is getting removed, or at least changed to not be ridiculously overpowered anymore. Some overpower effects are getting nerfed, like the glyphs and these kind of things. So in general, we're probably not gonna see Hodas hitting for like 1 billion damage or something like that anymore. I did a bit of like napkin math on this, and it seems like it's like a nerf of like 80 to 90% or so. So we're still gonna see dozens of million, maybe 100 million or 200 million or so for Hodas. So it's still like in one-shot territory for world bosses, I imagine, depending on how they rescale the game. They also mentioned that they're gonna scale monsters again, and especially with like all these itemization changes, there is a lot of power creep coming. So I imagine that generally that the monster is gonna get more beefy and stuff. So we'll see how this will play out. I don't think that Hoda is necessarily dead or something, but it's not gonna be like up here when the rest is down here. But some cool stuff that Barbs are getting is Dust Devils, and also Leapquake might be a thing. So those are definitely looking exciting. In general, Double Swing is also getting better. That it combines well with Dust Devils as well. So you can probably do some combo there, or just play like Whirlwind with Dust Devils. So all of these things are getting pretty strong buffs here. And that might actually be like a build now, including the Leapquake. Also, they're giving some cool buffs to Call of the Ancients. There's a new unique item that really buffs it, and there's like a few other tweaks for it. They're getting like all of the pet bonuses as well now. So Call of the Ancients Barb, Pet Barb might actually be a thing. I started working on some planners already for some classes. For example, here I have some planners for the Rogue, the Grenade Rogue, and the Aerostorms Rogue. I have like a Druid thing somewhere. And I will definitely make one of those pet Call of the Ancients builds and see if that will get somewhere. Some other stuff here, Kick is getting buffed, and Charge, surprisingly, is not nerfed all that much. It does look pretty dire when you look at the patch notes, with especially the cooldown nerfs. They didn't nerf the damage all that much, but the cooldown, so you can't just perma-charge all the time. But I believe that with new affixes, if you can get a certain amount of cooldown reduction still, we might actually get to the point where eventually you have permanent charge again and can just kind of like one-tap entire screens yet again, but a little bit harder to get there. We'll see how this will play out. Now, for the Druids, there's also really interesting stuff here, but not too much. I guess Druids generally got the least out of this patch. Most importantly, the companions are getting mega buffed. There is some buffs for shapeshifting in particular, like combos of shapeshifting, where you want to be a bear and a wolf, and then, you know, kind of go back and forth. Like a lot of these passives like quick shift are getting buffed, but they work in different ways now to kind of facilitate such a playstyle. And then, you know, do like this kind of like double shapeshifting combo. I'm actually kind of excited for that. Back in Season 2, I already made a planner for a build like this, but I never played it. And I think now might be the time for this. Other than that, there are some other interesting buffs in there. For example, Shred is just getting some general buffs. That's kind of nice. Landslide as well. Lacerate, and for some reason Petrify is getting a pretty huge buff as well. So the ultimates are going to be much better outside of Cataclysm, I guess. So Druid has a bunch of good options there. Shout Druid might be a thing because of the Flash Render unique. You can now kind of like shout all the time and do a lot of damage in AoE around you. This might be pretty strong. Support Druid is getting some stonks. In particular, there is the shout aspect that previously belonged to the barbarians that reduces the cooldowns of shouts that now also applies to druids. So you can actually debilitating roar very often and constantly apply 70% damage reduction. So that might be a huge thing, especially in the pit on the higher tiers, or maybe for the uber bosses with the level 200 versions. That might make it very easy and trivial to actually do those bosses. And as kind of like a hypothetical theory crafting thing, I think Hurricane Druid could become a reality because they have reworked the Clarity passive that gives your next Wrath skill a massive damage buff when you cast it. And Hurricane has like a long cooldown and it can buff exactly that one Hurricane cast basically. And there's a bunch of other supporting tools for it. So I'm quite excited to see if we can make something like this work. Moving on to the Necros here, those are probably the biggest winners in this patch. In general, Necros looking really strong now, in particular with the pets and the summons. So all of these are getting massive buffs. In case you didn't know, the minions in general get 100% of the player stats now. So this applies to the crit, attack speed, potentially even defensive stats. I'm not sure about those. But in general, minions are going to be much more powerful. They've also reworked a lot of the codex powers. There is stuff like you get a lot of resources, you can get a lot of cooldown reduction, your golems can pull stuff in, you can get a lot of damage reduction from your blood golem, your mages can shoot bone spears. There's really crazy stuff in there now. So you can definitely do a lot of different combos, either pure minion builds or like a hybrid, like a core skill plus minion combo maybe. That remains to be explored. I'm not a huge minion expert myself on the Necros, I gotta say. So this is all kind of like uncharted territory and I will have to try this out myself on the PTR, to be honest. But I'm actually very excited to do so. So in general, Necros are looking really spicy. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Also, you can do like, for example, kind of like laid back minion builds now with Mandeln, where it's no longer like a hit effect, but instead it just kind of like procs every so often your minions attack. So you can kind of just like chill and then, you know, minions just like decimate everything. So there's this kind of stuff. And a bunch of other like buffs and so on sprinkled in. So Decompose, this gives you like yeah, a bit less corpses with the aspect now, but it's like much faster. It only needs 1 second channeling, for example. You get a lot of resources this way. Blood Surge gets even more buffs, so that's like one of the best builds in the game now, probably in general. It doesn't really have the greatest boss damage, but otherwise it's extremely fast, has like screen clear AoE, so that's kind of nutty. It even gets a new unique that works with corpses spawning extra novas for you and these kind of things. So there's some pretty crazy stuff here for the Necros. Kind of excited to try that out, and especially minions are on the menu here. Then we have the Rogue. So Rogue is also getting a lot of really juicy stuff. In general, Rogue seems to be one of the weaker classes in the current patch. And with Season 4, I think that might change a little bit. So there's, first of all, some cool new tools here. They've already teased this a little bit. The Grenade Rogue is coming. I actually made a planner for this already, so I can share that in the description as well. Basically, you pick up a lot of these grenade aspects. They all now buff the damage of all of grenades, and you just try to proc as many grenades as possible. So I kind of made the setup like this. And I think it's going to be kind of strong and very interesting to try. Definitely very curious to see how this will play out. And yeah, this could be really, really powerful. Then we have the Arrow Storms. That is also one of these other like flat damage aspects, similar to the grenade stuff and the Leap Quake, for example. A lot of these aspects are getting major buffs, including this one. So an Arrow Storms Rogue, or like a, you know, kind of like themed rogue at least, can be a thing. So I'm excited to see this. In general, dodge, dodge, dodge. They are buffing some dodge aspects actually that potentially apply to all of the classes, but I guess Rogue has the most synergy in general with that, with extra dodge chance from the passive tree and extra synergies in the Paragons, for example. So there's a bunch of stuff there, but there are actually ways to now play like more dodge-focused defensive builds, basically. So I'm quite excited to see how this will play out. Rapid Fire is getting a new unique that gives you exploding arrows. That sounds extremely fun. So this will probably have like insane AoE in addition to very good single target. Barrage is getting a new aspect that gives you Pierce and extra attack speed. So that is almost like the multi-shot from the Demon Hunters in Diablo 3. I'm very excited for that one as well. Flurry is getting mega buffed. There's also like some synergies with the grenade stuff here, so you might want to do this. Inner Sight and Preparation are getting buffed, so those will definitely be viable choices in the future. We already see a bit of play in Preparation, but combo points has just been so powerful basically for the entire time since the game came out, and we're getting some much deserved buffs here. It's going to be really cool to play like some old school Inner Sight Twisting Blades build again or something like that. Victimize gets also some overhaul, especially they're trying to fix some bugs with it. We have to see if this is going to be enough. If anything, mostly like a penetrating shot thing, but we'll see. Exploit Weakness is a highlight here, 20,000 damage, that's kind of strong, especially because a lot of rogue builds kind of lack single target damage, so I think a lot of rogue builds want to pick that up on the Paragons. Beastfall Boots, kind of surprising, was not changed. So I was expecting we would see a nerf to this item because of this whole like boss one-shot shenanigans, 1 billion damage kind of stuff you can do. There is a nerf to Banishwall's Talisman in this patch, but it's not really like make or break for this setup. So I was kind of expecting something here, and yeah, like this we might still be able to one-shot basically everything in the game. Let's see. And in general, Rogue getting a lot of kind of like juicy little upgrades here and there, and I'm very excited to jump in on the PTR and do a lot of stuff on the Rogue. So let's see. Then for the final class we have the Sorcs here. So first of all, Frozen Orb, we already saw the unique for that, the Fractured Winter Glass, that makes your Frozen Orbs spawn conjurations that then shoot Frozen Orbs, and they can spawn more conjurations and so on. So that sounds ridiculous. There's also a bunch of other buffs for that. It's going to be very fun to play that, I think. Conjurations in general getting some mega buffs, for example through the passives and some other things. You can get extra damage reduction now. In general, it seems like they're trying to push a bit of a theme for the Sorcs here with changing this meta of 3 or 4 defensive skills where you just like, you know, spam Flame Shield and Teleport and Ice Armor and all that all the time. It might actually be possible to now play a Sorc that doesn't run any defensive skills, or maybe just one or so, and potentially not even runs barriers at all. So there is some synergies now to actually play like kind of like a life-based Sorc and still be tanky enough, for example, without just relying on barriers all the time. Quite excited to see how this will play out, but this might be something I will try. Then Teleport, that kind of surprises me, but Teleport is getting a bit of a change, where you get a new aspect that flat reduces the cooldown of Teleport. And with enough cooldown reduction, and depending on the order of operations of that calculation, you might actually get to a point where Teleport has a 0 cooldown. But that's a bit of a maybe. We'll have to see that on Tuesday. If that is a thing, it will probably get nerfed anyway. Either way, that might be fun on the PTR. Alright, then we have some other cool thing here. There's a new unique coming, Firebolt. It basically gets a combination with Firewall. So you pop a Firewall and then you shoot Firebolt through that Firewall. And it will split into more Firebolts and they do extra damage. And that sounds really cool. So I'm kind of excited to try such a build. It's kind of like a 2-button build, and yeah, maybe that works out really well. Maybe you can even shotgun enemies with that and hit them with all of the projectiles. That could be really cool, and I'm kind of excited to try this. Incinerate is also getting some major upgrades here. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough because I don't really know much about Incinerate currently. I've never really seen anyone play it, but there's some major upgrades in there. And yeah, in general, Sorc is looking really good. There are some bug fixes that make it weaker as well. For example, Asus Ferocity, the key passive, previously applied to all damage, now is only for fire. So as it says basically. And also Frigid Breeze is like a mana passive that also is supposed to only work with cold. That is also getting fixed. And also they are fixing the evade cooldown reduction that procs from Unstable Currents. So whenever Unstable Currents summoned or cast an extra lightning skill, it would also proc attacks reduce the weight cooldown, especially with Teleport Enchant. That was very powerful. that is also getting fixed. So that is not in the PTR patch notes apparently, but it was confirmed that this is actually coming in Season 4. So we don't have like a ridiculous teleport. And that's also why I think we're probably not going to see this. But let's see. And finally, for some general updates to the game, I was going to like throw them all in here. What else I found interesting here. So first of all, no more cheat death potions. This mostly applies to hardcore players. I'm very happy with that. I also heard people saying they're very unhappy with that. I think in general it's very good for the game, regardless, because, well, cheat deaths just kind of like removed the main reason to even play hardcore, so I'm kind of cool with this change here. Then we have skills have more tags, so there's like a general thing across the board as well. For example, there is the core tag now on mastery skills on a Sorc. You have shouts on a Druid and these kind of things. So it seems like they're kind of like broadening and like opening up all these you know, different tags and the skill designs. And this will probably also like make more room for improvements down the line and probably go well with this new tempering system and the new stats that you can find on items. So I expect we're going to see more of this, and it's probably going to be like a lot of stuff with like even like chain tag. There's like, you know, chain lightning has a tag now like this, and rabies. So there might even be stuff in the future like your chain skills chain more often and these kind of things. And I guess in general we can have a lot more customization with how skills actually function. So that's going to be really cool. I talked about dodge, so yeah, that is going to be a thing now in general, not just for the rogues, I think. There is some elixir changes, so they have been like reworked a little bit, reverted. In general, also like the materials are changing a little bit, so it's going to be a bit more streamlined. There is elixirs now to give you more than 5% XP, not that much more, it's like 8%, 6%, but there might be some other surprises out there. We'll see, and in general, it seems like there's more power in those elixirs. If you don't know, we're gonna get a bigger zoom out, so you can actually zoom the camera further away and see more of the map, and that is going to apply like, you know, across all the platforms. You can, you know, choose either the standard or the more zoomed out version. It's gonna be really cool. Controller players rejoice, they can now choose the distance on skills. So for example, with teleport and leap and these kind of things, if there was no target, then you had a fixed distance that was very short. And now you can actually like choose with your controller depending on how far you like incline it basically. So that's kind of cool. Multi-log chests getting Omega buffed. I guess a lot of people don't even know what that is. But well, it's a chest that you can find in certain dungeons. Sometimes it's like a random spawn, and you have to do like a little riddle that is scattered across the map, and you can come back to the chest and then you get a bunch of loot and 500 obels. So that's actually really powerful. So you might actually want to farm certain dungeons to specifically get those obels, but I'm not sure about the spawn rate. I think it's relatively low. We'll see. In general, there's a lot of nightmare dungeons in the rotation, so even if we have multi-log chest dungeons, it's going to be kind of hard to actually get exactly those sigils, I guess. But there's 49 nightmare dungeons. It's like over a third of all of the dungeons in the game that are in the rotation. Usually that's 30. So it's like much more unlikely to get those sigils that you really want, and it's going to be a lot more RNG. So we'll have to see how this will play out, but I think generally it's kind of cool that there's a bit more variety, because especially after running vaults for an entire season with only 4 vaults to choose from, I'm very happy to see a bit more variety again, to be honest. Then there's also a mention here about the graphics of the skills changing. So this is already a thing in the game, but it's not that noticeable. But for example, Incinerate is one of those that is like the more obvious ones, where if you have higher skill ranks, the flame turns blue and it looks more impressive and these kind of things. And this is supposed to be a thing for a lot of skills in the game, or all of the skills, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's not really so apparent. So apparently they're intensifying this a little bit. And we have a very nice wording that someone from chat gave me. So that's why not. This says, thanks chat. We went through this here on live stream, of course. Then we have the dungeon events getting buffed with XP, so that might be a thing for leveling now. Usually when you're speedrunning a character to level 100, you kind of like skip events all the time. Also there's like, for example, a buff to Hell Tides, and you can now do them in World Tier 1 and World Tier 2. So that might also be a thing for like at least the early game. We'll have to see how well this will actually perform compared to, like, for example, domain tunnels farming and how good are these dungeon events compared to just, you know, going to the next dungeon as fast as possible. I'll try to do a bit of testing on this and see if you can find out anything. In general, they're also like making dungeons just like more smooth. For example, objectives, like you have to click on something or you have to pick up something, it's going to be much faster, so you don't have to like stand there and channel for like 3 seconds. It's all streamlined to 0.75 seconds now, and you also, seems like you don't get interrupted anymore, so that's kind of cool. And lastly, ray tracing. This is already in the game actually, but I think a lot of people might have missed that. But for the high resolution graphics enjoyers, yeah, that is some cool new feature, and I heard really good things about ray tracing, so it just makes the game look more pretty for those people that really care about it. And with that, I have summarized all of the patch notes. There is obviously a lot more stuff here, a lot of details that are left out here, so if you want to see more, I recommend you go check this out. I have the Maxwell version of the patch notes linked here, where you can also have all of these you know, nice little like skill embeds and the items and all that stuff. You can just mouse over them as always, and you can kind of like see the before and after on everything. There's yeah, a lot more stuff to unpack here as well in future videos and on the PTR. I'm going to be busy recording a lot of stuff in the next days, and well, get ready for a lot of uploads, I guess. So with that, I'm going to leave you. Hope you enjoyed my little summary. I'm very excited for it. I think it's going to be an amazing patch. And yeah, we don't even know the season theme. We don't even know like the final outcome. There's going to be like feedback implemented in the final patch, and I think it's going to be great when it goes live in May. So hope you enjoyed this summary here. Let me know what you think, and see you guys next time.